what informed the question of giving a notice to the members of the public, especially when you want to exercise Article 37, was for purpose of requesting the police officers to give you security. But again, a notice can be issued publicly. A notice can be issued on social media. There is no requirement that you have to write to a specific individual to exercise that constitutional right. The drafters of the Constitution did not anticipate a situation where you have to seek for someone's consent to exercise that right. It's inherent, it's fundamental, and for that reason, it cannot suffice that you have to write. What if they refuse? It means if they refuse to issue you with to issue with directions, that means your right is violated. And that's the reason why the drafters of the Constitution did not give anyone the right to guarantee you permission to demonstrate or to exercise your rights under Article 37. The last question that was asked, even before I invite the other questions, because I can see the advocates are already on the session, was the question of cash bail in police stations. I want to ask you to look at bail and bond policy directions. These are documents that are available online. The bail and bond policy directions as to on the question of police officers giving you cash bail are available. And those policy directions provide a range of approaches. A police officer is supposed to give reasonable bail, just the same way when you've been presented in court. But remember, when you're at the police station, you are an arrested person. When you are in court, you are an accused person. Of public prosecution, who approves charges. Any charge, any criminal charge is approved by the by the Director of Public Prosecutions. And even before they approve, they have a policy on plea taking. They have to look at the case, they have to look at the facts, they have to consider the evidence before they approve a charge for any offense. Those are laws within our country that actually regulate prosecution of such cases. And so when you have been arrested in a police station, you are just an accused person. You have not been charged with any offense. Because if you are to be charged before a court of law, by the time you are presented before that court, the Director of Public Prosecution must have approved that charge, must have looked at the evidence presented, and there are so many cases to that effect. And it's very important to note that our police officers do that duty of investigating and presenting the evidence before the Director of Public Prosecution. But since we are deliberately speaking on the question of arbitrary arrests, if you think you have been arbitrarily arrested and you have been denied bail, then that is where, of course, the policy on cash and bond at the police station come in place. The police officers are under that policy. Have been given powers to release you on a free bond and issue you with directions to appear there, depending on the charge. They also have discretion to give you a certain amount that is reasonable. The word is reasonable, that you are able to come back. Of course, there are serious cases, serious offenses where they will decide to hold you until the following day and present you in a court of law. And in a court of law, they request for more time through a miscellaneous application to have you to continue the investigation while they are holding you. But remember, that power to hold you beyond 24 hours is power that is given to the court. It's not given at the police station. They have no mandate, they have no powers to hold you beyond 24 hours. but they have power to hold you within 24 hours. Beyond that period, then it becomes an unconstitutional incarceration. And so you have a right to demand through your advocate or individually to actually request to be released on a reasonable cash bail, depending on the offense. The offense of demonstrations, and you have seen the precedents that have been created by our courts of law, that you can actually proceed. The courts have released people who are accused of picketing on a free bond. It means that this is an offense that does not warrant you to pay a huge amount of money. And therefore, unless you are accused of an offense of destruction of property, and it's very important that you know which offense you have been accused for about or of at the time of arrest, you have a right to demand and seek for information as to why you have been arrested. There is an occurrence book where a report of your arrest is actually reported. You have to request that they show you. If they refuse, ensure that your next of kin or someone else can be able to check, or a family friend can be able to check on the OB and demand to know which offense you've been arrested on, so that based on that offense you're able to know, to advise, to indicate to your advocate or any other person representing you that I've been arrested for this offense, I did not commit, or I committed this offense and I need your legal assistance. So once you have that understanding, it's very important to know. We are asking you not to. It's very important for you to know, if you want to exercise your right under Article 37, please do not commit other offenses under the Penal Code. Remember, theft or stealing or robbery with violence, those are offenses under our Penal Code. Remember, there are offenses to do with destruction of property. Remember, there are offenses to do with assaulting other people, violating other people's rights while they are demonstrating. And it's very important that you stick to your right to demonstrate. Do not be subjected to destroying property, because that is not contained in our constitution, because that becomes an offense under the penal code, and you'll be charged for that offense. And if indeed it's true that you committed that offense, it's very important that, of course, the court will know that you did not participate. And of course, the threshold in criminal cases is beyond reasonable doubt. If the prosecution is able to prove that you committed that offense, then you will suffer the punishments. But it's very important that you subject yourself as per the provisions of Article 37. Do not go beyond the violation, the provisions of the Constitution in demonstrating. And picketing does not involve those other things. And therefore, that is why we are very specific as to the exercise of that right going forward. I can see several advocates. I can see PLO. I can see Wakili Steve. Perhaps if you can allow me to ask, to allow the other members to ask questions so that you can be able to address them. If you can confirm kindly, Steve and PLO, that you can hear me. You have the microphones. So we can ask several questions even as you have the microphones. PLO, you can hear me? Steve, any of you?
Yeah, I can hear you loud and clear, Manu.
Thank you. Thank you, PLO. Perhaps if you can allow us to take a few other questions on this issue so that you are able to address the same appropriately. Thank you. We have Kevo. Kevo, are you still there? Kevo Kevi or Joy? Kevo Kevi. Can you guys hear me? If you have a microphone and you think you're not going to drop it so that we can give other people opportunity to speak. Lekishon, can you hear me? Yes, clearly.
Question on this matter is arising out of the recent decision by the court that the police are not supposed to use violence or even what do you call it, tear gas and all these other violent means. And the following day, I believe, the police proceeded to do exactly what they were told not to do by the courts. The question I have is, is the Law Society, and I'm asking Madam President, going to take any action in that respect so that the police don't interfere again? The other aspect related to that is the question of anticipatory actions, such as writing to the international community, maybe the UN or some other body that, so that because this thing now requires, we look beyond our borders sometimes. We have friends, we have enemies, but I think it's good to look outwards, so that this right is protected. Right now there is a lot of impunity around it by the way the police has been behaving. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Madam President. I hope you have had those questions.
Let me answer some and then you can answer the rest. With regards to our
Okay.
response, we'll be issuing a statement. Just we've been analyzing what's been going on in terms of the bodies that were collected, were identified. Let me not say yet identified, the bodies that were found, and what the communication that has since come from the DCI from the last two press statements, and we'll be issuing our position on the same. As LSK, our position is we thank the DCI for calling upon us to work hand in hand with them. But the challenge that we continue to have is some of these bodies, the identification process, we will analyze closely, due process is followed, even how investigations were done on this matter, because it's of national importance that irrespective whether they are arising from the Mandamano killings or not, our security agencies should provide us with adequate security. And so such killings happen in such a magnitude, and we need to see the repository where there are missing names register that can coordinate or collate with regards to those missing persons that have been found. We still have tracing people who are being found in mortuaries arising from the Mandamanos. We still need accountability and investigation. In the swift manner it was done for this particular incident to be done. We have police officers that have been identified that are still on the streets, and we hope we will not see them on the streets tomorrow, because we will censure our investigative agencies if this is what they are treating us to. We need police that have killed, police that have abused their powers, to be held accountable. It's not enough that the Inspector General has resigned. That is command responsibility, but we also want those individual police officers that have abused their powers, that have killed, to be held accountable. Let them answer before a court of law. And we'll be looking at also different avenues with regards to who are our partners, local and international, that we can work to ensure that we leave no man behind and we have justice for all the victims during these protests. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. Just to add to what the President has said, of course, we have cases in court as the Law Society, and you've seen the orders that have been that were issued by the courts on the question of the abuses committed by the police officers. As the President has indicated, we have several matters touching on the individual office bearers, office holders within those spaces. I'm talking about the DCI. I'm talking about the Inspector General of Police. I'm talking about the Nairobi area head. I'm talking about the director of the National Intelligence Service and those other institutions that have actually been involved in this process and are in charge of our police force. We have held them individually responsible, and those matters are ongoing. And I think that's the best we can do. We have also instituted proceedings in form of contempt of court, especially on a continued violation by individual police officers, individual OCSs who had a number of the police stations where people have been held beyond 24 hours. And those cases are ongoing, I believe, as the Law Society will ensure that the individuals who violated these rights of the members of the public are able to be brought to book, and they are able to take up the responsibility for those violations. Before I bring in PLO on the questions, kindly,
Perhaps,
yes, yes.
you haven't. I don't think Madam has answered. I'm happy with the question, the way she has answered the first part. But the second part of my question was the idea of escalating to international bodies that can help us, whether it is after the fact or whatever. It's good to bring it up to international level, to the relevant bodies under the UN and so forth, so that we are able to they are able to help us deal with the criminal aspect of the way the police are handling this matter.
Thank you, Madam President. Are you there? If you can be able to take that.
We are working on modalities, yes, because we know there are the special rapporteurs that also deal with the same. And so some have reached out, and so we'll be preparing our reports and sharing so that they can also do their own independent investigations. But I can assure you the different agencies are already monitoring what is happening. So some have shared their views and their concerns, and that's why we are trying as much as possible to also work with the different agencies so that we have one front with regards to how we are dealing with these matters. But yes, some have reached out already. The scenario is in the country.
Thank you, Madam.
Thank you. Thank you. ARN, I hope your question has already been answered. I want to invite Daniel. Daniel, can you hear me?
Yes, I'm hearing you. Good evening.
Kindly proceed.
Yes,
Good evening.
I have two questions. And my first question is this. I was asking about, as tomorrow, we are protesting tomorrow. We know you have some politicians who are planning to disrupt our protest so that they may look ugly. What are the steps or measures you as Law Society of Kenya have taken to avoid that case? And another question. This question I wanted to ask for many days, but today I think it is the right time to ask because I see Dr. Miguna Miguna here. There was an issue that was raised by Miguna Miguna on Twitter concerning the killings that happened in Githurai. And he challenged the Law Society of Kenya and other agencies about investigation, you to take out investigation, and even said that many people were killed, almost 400 people, and they were cremated in Kahawa barracks. Can we get that clarification? And if it may be, you may invite Dr. Miguna Miguna to give us clarification, because that question has been eating me for many days.
Thank you for that question. I will take two more. Perhaps then I can allow Madam President to address the same and the advocates on this session.
Hello, can I go on? Yes, thank you.
Who's speaking?
Kevin speaking.
Please proceed.
Thank you for the opportunity. Mine is simple and straight. We witnessed abductions going on, and we talked about it, but it seems there is no action being taken. Recently, I've seen a clip. somebody being abducted with the police who are in civilian attires, and some are guarding them in a uniform. What is the Law Society doing doing to curb this? Because I say we keep talking and then there's no action. Like, I mean, we're not a banana republic. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Madam President, if you are there, you can pick those, even as I invite the other colleagues to address them.
Let me pick this one and then the other colleagues can answer. Now, with regards to what we are doing,
Thank
we
you.
picked up that complaint and we had moved the court with regards to some of these complaints, but also we'll seek to move the court further in terms of issuing declaratory orders with regards to what is happening. Because we have sought habeas corpus, but unless we're able to identify the name of that individual, then we can seek for the court to demand he be produced before a court of law and either is charged or released. The other option would be to seek for a declaratory orders for the courts to pronounce themselves, particularly on the kind of abductions that are taking place in this country.
Thank you, Madam President. To add on what you have said, I think the High Court issued orders that were open-ended, and this is very important for the members of the public to understand. This was not; these orders are not limited to the initial habeas corpus and the initial abduction petition that the Law Society did. It's very important to note that the Law Society did habeas corpus application. A habeas corpus is a production of the individuals who have been disappeared, who are not able to be found in police stations, but who the members of the public know were actually abducted by police officers. And in those several suits that we filed in petitions that we filed in court, in one of them, Honorable Justice Mugambi directed that the individuals who were arrested at the time they were 13, any other future arrests. So the order was open-ended to include any future arrests that the police officers must do their duty. Remember, the Constitution provides for these things. This is not new under our Constitution. The Constitution provides that if you have been arrested, you have to be informed of what you are arrested for, and you have to be produced in court those charges. It is a responsibility given under the Constitution. What the Law Society is doing is to actually bring to the attention of the court on those constitutional violations. And of course, the court has a duty to give interim directives. And that's why we said to avoid members, people, Kenyan citizens who have been appointed to public office, using those offices and abusing them and using them by ensuring that they violate individual rights of the members of the public, we will actually institute proceedings. And that is what we have done under their individual names. If you are an OCS commanding a particular police station and your police officers have violated and gone against the Constitution to hold an individual beyond the period stipulated in the Constitution, they have proceeded and actually armed a peaceful protester. They have proceeded and actually murdered an individual. Then they have a duty to answer to those violations in their individual capacity as the bosses of those police stations. And therefore, I think as a law society, we are doing what it takes to ensure that we hold responsible the people who have been put in office to actually keep law and order. Remember, we have had several citizen assembly discussions on these questions of the Bill of Rights and the rights of arrested persons, individuals who are suspected to have committed an offense. We indicated earlier that the first 2 weeks of the demonstrations, as the Law Society of Kenya, we monitored the first demonstration. There were close to 400 people arrested in the evening of that demonstration. And in that evening, 397 were released. The only three who are left and who are presented in court without a charge was Boniface Mwangi and two others. And in court, the police officers refused to present these individuals in court. And we found out later on that the DPP refused to charge. Why? Because the evidence presented by the police officers did not meet the threshold to institute a suit. And remember, some of these cases are the ones that actually bring the backlog within our courts. You bring a frivolous case just for the sake of it to charge someone in court. You actually clog the court with frivolous cases which are actually bound to be dismissed. Then we blame the court for the backlog. And I think I appreciate the fact that the DPP looks into these cases case by case and actually determines which one should go to court. And therefore, we had the Boniface Mwangi and the two others released at the parking lot in court without a charge. Subsequent to that, we've been following on those arrests that have been in place. And I think it's very important that we hold the individuals who hold these officers responsible. It's no longer tenable to actually hide behind the office that you sit in and assume that personal responsibility will not be taken upon you as an individual. I will invite PLO perhaps to address the other questions that have been asked. I think there's a question about, I think the president has addressed the question of Miguna Miguna and the investigations and Kahawa barracks. Kevin asked a question on the question on witnesses and abductions and police officers actually using plain clothes and use it without identifying themselves, arresting individuals. Kindly, PLO, if you can hear me, if you can proceed. Thank you.
Thank you, my friend and learned colleague Manuel. Well, once again, welcome on board to all patriots who are here listening to, into this space. And I've been listening to a couple of questions, save for the one that you've raised, Manuel. There's this particular question on the use of tear gas, the water cannons, based on the decision and the compliance with this particular directive. So I think I will answer them in quick succession, if you permit me a little latitude. So one, the other day, around should be towards the end of last month or early this month. So the High Court sitting in Malindi, issued temporary orders stopping security agencies, and that would mean the National Police Service and any security agency incidental thereto, from using water cannons against protesters, from using tear gas against protesters, or just persons, who are we, the people who are protesting against not just the Finance Bill 2024, as media, has been misreporting some of the media houses, but protesting based on the governance issues that we would like addressed so that we chart a new path as a country. So these are still the orders granted by the court, and that would mean when we appear on the streets tomorrow, to exercise our rights against, excesses of power and Article 37 of the Constitution, then police or whoever will be deployed to quote unquote man or deal with through water cannons and tear gases. So those are still the orders subsisting before the courtroom. So violation and defiance or defilement of the court orders, and of course that would consequently warrant further actions against those who perpetrate such terror on the protesters and those who assemble technically to do that which they're required to do under, of course, the precincts of the law. So this other question on the dress code, for the identification for police officers, Well, the National Police Service, which is technically the umbrella, of different, organs or security agencies, including DCI, including GSU, including ATPU, including anti-stock theft, and different security agencies underneath the National Police Service, including AP as well. So they are governed by law, of course, first by the Constitution as the apex or the grand norm of laws in the country. Secondly, by the National Police Service Act and the subsidiary legislation and regulations thereto. And one most important thing that people do forget is about the National Police Service standing orders as of June 2017. So this particular standing orders, when you quickly go to chapter 31 of these standing orders, it talks about the dress code regulation. And I will move swiftly to standing order number 22 and chapter 31 of the National Police Service standing orders. So standing order 22 talks about plain clothes, officers. Of course, there's conduct of when are police officers supposed to dress in plain clothes and when a police officer is supposed to dress and identify themselves, as law established. So standing order number 22, I would just read it verbatim. It talks about police officers other than those who are attached to 1, DCI, 2, to the Internal Affairs Unit, and then lastly, you have the VIP protection sections and crime branches who shall wear uniform when on duty. So that is the provision under, standing order number 22, chapter 31 of the dress code regulations under the National Police Service standing orders. And then further, the standing orders direct that, if you don't conform within those particular exemptions, however, even these particular exemptions require special circumstances, and nowhere would Article 37 fit into special circumstances where even officers from DCI or officers from Internal Affairs Unit, and VIP protection sections would meddle into a peaceful protest. Because the first question you should ask yourself is why would, officers attached to VIP protection sections when, 2 or so weeks ago after the untimely and sad demise of Rex Kanyeki, may his soul rest in eternal comfort, the officer who apparently, was alleged to have, shot him, it was alleged he works at the office of the president. So why would an officer who works at the office of the president, which I would assume based on standing order number 22, works for the VIP protection, or maybe not, because when you look at OP, Rambe House, the way it's wired, different departments require different manning. Of course, there are officers who may be working at the office of the president, Rambe House, but they just man either the main gates or the doors that lead to the offices of different persons who work at that particular building. So why would police officers within the VIP protection unit, within the Internal Affairs Unit, involve themselves in peaceful protest? So the bottom line here is that identification of police officers should be at all times, either if you don't have, your badge or ID or your service number, which is normally displayed, at the left, subscript of the respective officer, then you are only in defiance of the law. So this has been happening time without numbers, and I think most of you, if not all of you, have seen this pop with maroon or red type of double cabin with persons who mask themselves up. So why would you unleash persons who no one knows about? The protesters don't know about these people. But what is even more saddening is the officers in uniform are working hand in hand with these other persons who haven't identified themselves. They've masked up, they've put all those gears. You don't know exactly who you are dealing with, whether this is a genuine officer or this isn't a genuine officer. And I think LSK has filed. Manu, I think, will shed more light on that, on the identification, the mandatory, identification of police officers on duty. Because if you are deployed to calm down protesters, these are peaceful protesters. So technically, there's no violence that should be arising. But it gets to a point where violence is instigated by the said police officers who are on duty just to protect, any, form of, property, destruction, and so on and so forth. Even in those particular circumstances, it is required that I know who exactly am I dealing with as a protester, because I'm not carrying any weapon. I'm not carrying any other thing that would perhaps make me not be peaceful as a protester, and that would require that proportionate force, not excessive force, but proportionate force meted on, violent, protester based on the circumstances and situation of the moment. So even in places and circumstances where protest may have perhaps not turned out as it was meant to turn out based on the prior planning, the kind of force that should be meted out by police should be proportionate to the opposite reaction, what exactly is happening on the other side of the road. So as I wrap up on this dress code matter, that is, the position of the moment. But even then, we have all these standing orders. It's 1,195 pages of the National Police Service standing orders. But the question we should be asking ourselves is, how many, in the service? Because right now it's hard to tell whether it is a service, it's the National Police Service, or if it's a force still.
Mimi ndo huyo.
PLO, kindly proceed. We have lost you.
All right.
PLO, unmute yourself. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Thanks.
Kindly proceed.
So I was saying right now, we have degenerated into
Go on, PLO.
We lost you again. Okay, even as we wait for PLO to return, I think he has already candidly addressed some of the concerns that were raised, especially on plainclothes police officers. It's very important to know that as a law society, we have instituted proceedings on those abductions, and some of the issues you have raised in court touch on the failure by the police officers to identify themselves. And this is very important for you to note. And as citizens, you have to actually take precautions at every time. If an individual identifies him or herself as a police officer, then you have to request that they produce their number, their practice number. And the standing orders, as PLO has indicated, require that you have to actually put on the badge. There's a badge that is given to those officers to put on while they are discharging their duties, so that it's very easy to identify these individuals. What the National Police Service is doing is actually allowing individuals who might be involved in kidnappings or illegal offenses to actually arrest members of the public. And that's why we have concerns with regard to people disappearing, people being found in quarries and all that. It's very important that when you're met with this situation, you have to demand and especially what happens in public space. I saw that today there is someone who was kidnapped or was abducted by police officers in Westlands, and there were the people around that space included uniformed police officers. It's very important that you demand for the identity of those individuals, even when they fail. And it's important that this episode was recorded because we can account to those faces. It's very important you also seek that they indicate to you which offense they are arresting you about, so that you already know that you're being arrested for a specific offense. Sometimes, and I know in most cases, they don't indicate who they are. They are wearing masks. They fail to identify themselves, and that's why we are in court today. Previously on this question, we are hoping that the court will give directions, even though the Constitution provides for these issues. And that's why we always run back to court to seek for interpretation and to seek for confirmation of violations, because it's only it's only in court that we can confirm this violation. I want to call Mr. Daniel. I think if you have spoken, kindly drop your microphone so that we can allow as many people as possible. Mr. Daniel, can you hear me? If Mr. Daniel, you can't hear me, Kisia, if you have the microphone, kindly. Kisia? Dr. Kasi? Dr. Kasim? Mohammed, can you hear me? Kisia, please proceed. If you have the microphone, I can see your hand. Kindly unmute yourself so that you are able to speak. Mohammed, are you there? Can someone confirm that my microphone is working kindly? Kisia? Engineer AM? Engineer AM, can you hear me? Free? Free, are you there? Steve, can you hear me? Mohammed Adan? Mohammed Adan? Mohammed, kindly unmute yourself. Mohammed?
Can I proceed?
Dr. Kisia, proceed. Dr. Kisia, proceed. We have had internet issues. Kindly proceed.
Okay. Mine is a question that has been asked by someone on the comments. He said that there are some people who are arrested in Bondo, but I think it was last week. So until now, they haven't been released. And upon inquiry today, they said that they were transferred to Siaya police station. So I don't know how that can be addressed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kisia. Free mind.
Can you hear me? Hello?
Kindly speak, we can hear you.
Okay. Mine is to appreciate the information that is being laid out so that people can be aware of the that done. So I hope we'll all meet tomorrow and we'll spend make sure we don't violate other people's and yeah, that's all for me. And then for the session.
Thank you. Mtujazi, Kenya.
Hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Steve.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. It's an honor that you have considered people with not much of a following. So my question will digress from Article 37 of the Constitution, and will just inquire about. So the clarion call has switched from reject finance bill, and it went to Ruto must go. Now we are advocating for good governance and accountability in government. Now, the question is, what will essentially happen if our president decides to resign? We know that that will be a difficult thing to come to reality, but there is a possibility. And if the possibility becomes reality, what might happen? I would like to get clarification on that, and thank you very much.
Thank you for those contributions. We'll go straight to Jasiri. I can see we have a number of legal experts within the space. Jasiri, kindly, if you have the microphone, you have 2 minutes. You can ask your question. Jasiri, can you hear me? If you can't, Mtujasi, if you have the microphone, please. Watchhawk, sorry. Okay. Kisia, you're back. Kisia, can anyone hear me?
I can hear you. I can hear. I think I'll drop the mic so that you can give.
Yes, you can hear you, Mr. Manuel.
Kindly drop so that we can have the rest. Free mind. If you don't have the microphone, if you have the microphone and you don't have something to say, kindly drop the microphone so that other people can join. We have Gashi Moura, Meshakirwa. You have the microphones, kindly.
I think I can see PLO is back. His mic had dropped.
Yeah, PLO, thank you for coming back.
Hi, can you hear me?
If you have the mic. Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, I can hear you, PLO.
Yeah, I was to finish up on my submission, so I don't know where you guys lost me, but I think I just take 2 minutes to finalize on what I was saying. And like I said, identification by police officers, is mandatory, and it only makes the kind of work that they're doing to be as transparent as possible. Because if you have so much to hide, and that only means you have to find dubious ways to try and address exactly what, the kind of hidden agenda you have against the protesters. So when you look at, again, the Standing Order number 24 under Chapter 31 on the dress code regulation for the National Police Service Standing Orders, it says, that despite the following instructions, with regard to, the fitting or wearing and even the upkeep of the police uniform and equipment, shall be adhered to at all times. And it gives a list of exactly what police officers should, by all time, have with them. And this includes the badges and of the rank, which shall be affixed, to the shoulder, straps with, wire pins, rings. The bayonet and the scabbard equally shall be worn on the belt, behind the left hip. The belt shall be worn fittingly, tightly around the waist and horizontally. In the police officers in police uniform shall tie, the same through the, retaining straps of the trousers, the cloth badges, with dome fasteners, all those kind of things, even the collar badges. So the identification comes as a package. So if a police officer doesn't have all this, save for the police officers in VIP, protection, the internal affairs unit, the DCI, whose mandate actually are even limited not to interfere, with protesters, because only one with ill motives and working in those three of the tripartite of the institution that I've mentioned will have a different motive to interfere with the protesters. So I hope the matters, filed by, LSK on compelling, police officers to be identifying themselves and do away with this kind of plainclothes, dress code, which I think for me is being used to address different agenda, and which is quite different from what, police officers are deployed on the streets to do. So with that, I think I'll get it back to you, Manuel, and I'll be listening in to more questions as time unfolds. So I'll just be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, I think I need to recognize the presence of Steve. He's a co-convener, Public Interest Litigation Committee of the Law Society of Kenya. Council member Steve, welcome. I can see Wakil Ndegwa and several other advocates listed up. Perhaps if we can take several other questions. Mr. Nyakwama Hamisi Dennis, if you can actually raise your questions. And then we can have Livingston, and then Justice. If you have the microphones.
Yes, good evening.
Good evening, kindly proceed.
Yes, I'm raising a concern about Kakamega. We have had a plan of mechanics who have been paid to go and counter the protesters, the peaceful protesters tomorrow. So I don't know how it can be managed from the other side. Thank you.
Thank you. It's important to state that the mandate of the Law Society is limited to violations of the rights of individuals who exercise their rights under Article 37. There are issues that we are not able to address unless, of course, you supply us with that information. Remember that whereas we exercise our duty as an institution to mine the rights under the Bill of Rights, it's very important that you know that we only act on the basis of the evidence presented to us. If you feel that indeed there are people who have been paid to, we be able to take the necessary action, including challenging or taking the individuals to court and the individuals concerned in violating or actually curtailing your right to Article 37 and any other right under the Bill of Rights. Mr. Livingston, are you there?
Yes. Oh, yes. Nyajeni.
Kindly proceed.
Oh, so mine is just I'm directing my question to our LSK president about this
We lost you. Are you there? Livingstone, are you there? Justus, kindly take over the microphone even as we wait for Livingstone. Justus Okumu. Paul. Jonette Paul.
Okay, good evening.
Good evening. Kindly proceed.
Yeah, mine is, first of all, I want to thank the LSK for really guiding the people and helping us understand our rights under the Article 37 and the civic education you've done over through the times of these demonstrations and picketing as we really put the government into account. So my greatest concern about today is in an occurrence where an individual is abducted and, worst case of all, murdered. Does the accountability end at murder, how does the justice end until, how does it come to justice until the said family of the victim feel justified? And my second question about what is going on currently at Mukuru Kwajenga, the Kware dump site. I would like to confirm, was there altering with the evidence that it was burnt the previous night? And in such a situation, how does the LSK counter so that the victims can find justice as the citizen can find justice? Yeah, that's all.
Thank you. Thank you for that question. I think the president has heard you. Madam President, if you are there, if you can address those two concerns, even as we proceed, if you're there. If you're not there, we can allow another advocate. Even as we wait for the president, Komwansa, are you there? Kevin? Council? Kevin Omwanza, kindly proceed. If you had the questions. PLO? PLO, are you there? Komwansa, proceed.
Yes, I
if you
could
come
just
on
ask him to repeat the question kindly.
I think he asked two questions about the abductions and murder. Does it end at murder? Does the process end at murder? And what is supposed to be done after a person is found to have been murdered? He also asked a question about kware dams, the kware dam site, and the burning of the crime scene, and what is supposed to be done. Those were the two questions, Kevin.
Well, first to the first question, if he calls it murder, of course we have the penal code, and the penal code, of course, provides for the penal consequences for an act of murder. It's a capital offense. If investigations are done and the officers who are involved are found, then the law will take its course. But then again, I get where he is coming from, because he's asking this question in the context of the protests that are ongoing and the abductions, and of course, when somebody is abducted in such a nature and killed, it complicates the whole thing, because then it's difficult even to identify the perpetrator, because some of the perpetrators are in uniform. It's a special kind of a crime, but still, if there is there is goodwill from the security agencies and they decide to investigate and the officers are found, then it will be treated as any murder. You remember the Willy Kimani case, when the officers were implicated in the murder of Advocate Willy Kimani and the other people who were in the taxi with him. The officers were prosecuted, and they were convicted and they were sentenced. Now, the same applies to abductions. Now, to the second part of your question, what happens to Mukuru Kwanjenga now that they have banned the crime scene? I listened to the director at DCI and when they were doing a presser in the morning, and they termed the place as an active crime scene. It baffles me as it does you that they had to burn it up if they actually did it. And I think that is something that we will, as the Law Society of Kenya, perhaps you'll need to look into and provide direction. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Kevin. Meshach, are you there? Meshach Kirwa. And even as we get Meshach on the speaker, I think we have Mugweru. James, if you have the microphone, kindly if you can ask your question so that at least we're able to take a couple before a response is issued. We have Justice. Martin, kindly unmute yourself and address your concerns. Martin. There have been allegations about banning the crime scene at Kware. And I think as the president indicated earlier, of course, we are following up the process keenly. And even as Kevin has answered the question of murder, as to whether the process ends at murder, it doesn't end there. If you committed the offense of murders, as Kevin has indicated, it's a capital offense. We have to follow it up to the end to ensure that the people who committed those offenses are brought to book. Of course, there's the narrative that has been presented by the DCI. And of course, if they are in control as they purport, we expect that they need to give a report as to what happened and when it happened, and perhaps investigate, because they have capacity, resources to investigate and report to the members of the public as to what transpired and how those bodies were found there, and whether they are victims of the demonstrations or they are victims of a serial killer, as they actually indicated. So what it means to say that the places it's a crime scene, it means that they are still investigating and they are fact-finding. It's important to note that they have that duty, and sometimes it's very difficult, us as the law society, to interfere with an investigative process. It is their mandate, but we have a duty to hold them responsible and accountable in the information that they actually share to the public. And so we'll continue to find out and continue to record the bodies being discovered and profile them in terms of ensuring that justice is met, in terms of the families of the deceased person getting closure in terms of facts as to what transpired and how these people's lives were taken away. Junet, are you there? Jaunet, Paul.
Hello,
Still here.
you can hear me? Okay.
Yes, please.
Yeah, I'm still here. So, considering there is a point I want clarification. Considering how the abductions happen and there is no one who is taken to any police station, and there is no recording of the arrest and everything. It just happens chini ya maji with the rogue cops who, as PLO mentioned, they have no name tags, no uniform, so you can't even be sure if they are cops or not. Is it some kind of hard to follow up on who did what, why, and how?
Yeah, thank you for that question. We can take one more. Evans. Evans, can you hear me? Or Martin? Kindly, if you don't intend to speak, it's always important to switch off
Hello.
your microphone. Yes, yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. Actually, it's interesting that my question was just asked by the person by Janet who just spoke. But on top of that, I first also wanted to give the Law Society of Kenya your flowers. The lawyers have not only been part of helping those people who have been arrested, say whether they are
Hello.
activists or content creators or anyone from Kenyan, you guys have been able to come through, and also the filling in the gap of information. I believe that is the biggest role that you guys have played, and for that, kudos to you guys. Keep it up and keep informing people of what they need to know. Otherwise, Junet has already asked what I wanted to ask. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I don't know whether, PLO, you're able to respond to that question quickly so that we take another.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, proceed kindly.
Well, on the issue of follow-up, I think that's the question that was asked by one of the patriots on this particular space. Follow-up isn't a problem, especially for rogue officers or thugs in uniform. Uniform is in quote because the kind of regalia and paraphernalia, they're putting on is not synonymous to what, police officers who are governed by ethics, who are governed by the National Police Service Act and the regulations, who are governed by the National Police Service standing orders, or and equally our own constitution should not be behaving that way. So LSK, does its work to, at the end of the day, to protect, to defend, and to uphold the rule of law, and that will mean compliance, with what is happening, beyond compliance, follow-up, accountability, and transparency of what is happening beyond, the LSK as a society and as a body. So accountability for these rogue cops, and I think LSK has been on the trail of just trying to gather what they need to gather, just to bring to book the perpetrators and people who are unleashing unnecessary terror on the citizenry against what is required below, officers who kill at will, officers who maim at will, officers who perhaps abuse, misuse their powers because at the end of the day, there's someone who has their backing. But as Dr. Martin Luther King once said, that the arc of the moral universe is so long, extremely long, but someday when it bends towards justice, it bends, and there's no other escape route. So LSK will keep on doing the kind of work they do to monitor, the situation, and just at the end of the day, the lives that we lost, the wrecks, Kanyekis, and tons of others that we lost along the way. At least the death wouldn't be in vain, because what we want, not just as lawyers, but because we are first citizens, before we become lawyers, and our duty, is to amplify, the voice of the members of the public, to be there for them when they need us, and just to be the third eye, and check on the excesses of power across, all organs and state agencies. So yeah, the follow-up will be there, and it's been there, it's ongoing. So when we have all these people, brought to book, on the evidence, that we have collected, and the ODPP hopefully, shall approve the same to kickstart, the trial process, watching briefs for the victims of all, these excesses, meted on them. Yeah, that we shall continue doing, and
we've always done, and we will continue doing even when tomorrow dawns and in the other days as well. So I think with that, Manu, I have responded to the question. So again, keep asking questions rather, and we will be here to respond. So back to you, Manu. Thanks.
Thank you, PLO, for those submissions. I can see Dr. Miguna Miguna. If you have the microphone,
Yes.
perhaps if you can proceed.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak. I want to express my gratitude to the Law Society for being patriotic and for stepping in to defend the rights of Kenyans that have been seriously been subverted by the members of this current regime. I had a question asked which I wanted to attempt to answer, not as an officer of the Law Society of Kenya, but as a member of the Law Society of Kenya and as a citizen of Kenya. The question that was asked, and I don't think it has been answered, is what happens when William Ruto resigns or when we remove him from power, as might happen tomorrow. I believe that this is more of a political question than a legal question, but I'll answer both ways. First, I've often said, and many people have, and I can see NATO is in the body of the listening, we maintain that the citizens of Kenya have full rights under Article 1.1 of the Constitution to take their sovereign power in their hands and exercise it in accordance with this constitution by stating to William Samoei Ruto that due to the numerous issues that have arisen, issues of tyranny, issues of abductions, issues of looting, issues of failure to listen to the country, proceeding to order his troops to pass the Finance Bill 2024 that had been widely rejected by the country, they no longer have confidence in his leadership. They have essentially voted with their feet and have impeached him in the popular cathedral, which is the streets of the Republic of Kenya. Having done that, under Article 146 of the Constitution, which says that the office of the president shall become vacant if the holder of the office, A, dies, B, resigns in writing address to the Speaker of the National Assembly, or otherwise ceases to hold office under Article 144 or Article 145, or under any other provision of this Constitution. Which means that under Article 146C, the people can withdraw their support that they gave, the power that they donated to the president under Article 1, and can decide to exercise it directly. Once they do that, I submit, and I've suggested this elsewhere, that because the people have also expressed their dissatisfaction in the manner in which the National Assembly conducted itself on June 25th, and therefore rendered its judgment against the Speaker and members of that assembly, plus even the Senate, because of the passage of the conflicts of interest bill, the people may decide through a consensus to nominate the Chief Justice of the Republic of Kenya to sit over a transitional process which would constitute or reconstitute the IBC and conduct fresh elections. and or do any other thing that the people deem fit. That is my suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you. At this juncture, Abdurrahim, you have the microphone.
Thank you so much. My name is Abdurrahman. I am in Mombasa. I want to thank first of all the Law Society of Kenya for the role they have played in this struggle, for standing up for the citizens that were wrongly accused and arrested and those that were abducted. Sometimes this journey can be so scary and lonely, but with your support and your comradeship, it becomes easy and fascinating. My question, I'm seeking a legal opinion concerning citizens' arrest. The question of infiltration by goons and state-sponsored attackers that could infiltrate peaceful protests, as we are planning to protest tomorrow in the streets of Mombasa. We have organized ourselves into groups, especially for males, that are going to be notifying and identifying errant looters and people snatching probably smartphones and handbags from mostly females and members of the public, and destroying property in the streets of Mombasa City. So we needed a legal opinion from the Law Society concerning what are the laws that guide citizens arrest. How can we arrest such people, and what are the limits maybe that should not be what are the limits that should not be crossed maybe. So in citizens arrest, what are the procedures and what does the law say about arresting someone that has come to infiltrate property and burning vehicles? Thank you so much.
Thank you for your question. We can take one more, Dio. Dio
Yeah.
Henry.
All right. Thank you so much. And thanks to LSK for this forum and for the support we've had so far during the struggle. Mine is with regards to the national flag, which has become our symbol during the demonstrations. And I just want to know, what are my limitations of using the flag? I bought one, and am I legally allowed to hang it, say, on my window or somewhere in the house, or where am I limited so that I don't also break the law while I use the flag during my the process of demonstrating? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we have KD.
Yeah, I'm here. How you guys doing?
We're
I'm
fine.
just
Kindly
thankful.
proceed.
Thank you for everything. Thank you, LSK. Thank you, Madam President. We have a lot of faith in you, and I just have been trying so much to be on, like say, pass on my questions. But I think most of the Kenyans really want someone to listen to them, which is very, very impossible. I believe a good leader listens, unlike what we have in our country. Um, Maybe just a suggestion, if it really makes sense, if you guys can actually have a YouTube channel that you can upload all these talks on, because sometimes it's very hard to keep up with, so that you can just know you have like a particular talk you can actually go and listen to at your free time, because sometimes it's hard to follow up on everything. But just to get to my questions, The first thing I wanted to ask is with regards to the first incident that happened when these demonstrations came up and the parliament was, I won't say intruded, and people got into parliament. And my main question comes with regards to the mace. So it was said that the mace that was in parliament was a dummy mace. Is it legal to have a dummy mace, especially when you're passing the law of the land in parliament? And we know, or rather, the speculations that are going on that some of the reasons why we had the massacre in Githurai was because the mace was being sought after. So, can the mace be replaced if it is stolen? Or what does it call, for example, if the people took the mace from the parliament and it goes missing? Can the government just go ahead and replace it with another mace? That's my first question. The second question is with regards to the abductions. So, if a plainclothes cartel comes to arrest me and abduct me, rather, and I have neighbors around me who are actually looking and they can actually understand, they understand what is happening, they know it's illegal. Can they protect me, or is it unjustified? We know we can get afraid because they have ammunition and stuff like that, but I saw a clip somewhere whereby a man was being abducted and his two sons, almost I think 4 years old, they came and grabbed his legs. It's all over social media. I believe some of you have watched it already. But the question is just, can I defend my brother or sister from any abduction, even if it means, because we have strength in numbers. I don't know how possible that is. And then the last question is to the LSK as a body. I believe most of the legals in Kenya are members of the LSK. And you realize most of the people are coming out. We are coming out to you for knowledge, to us, number one. Number two, we're coming to you for sensitization on the understanding the constitution, which is a major problem in the country. And then thirdly, we just need someone to talk to. However, it's so unfortunate that some of the people who are putting us in this situation are lawyers who are actually not sensitive on what it means by being illegal. The members of parliament, most of them are lawyers, and they end up passing laws, but we know they have a lot of graft issues and some very integral backgrounds. What can the LSK do with regards to these particular individuals in terms of, like, say, trying to bring them out so that we can actually have a body that we know is independent and has a grasp that can actually be able to get rid of all these guys who have a bad reputation? For us not to say the lawyers have this ABC and D. We know a lawyer can actually go represent someone in court and they get compromised and a case becomes invalid or null. How does the LSK as a body govern or rather protect itself from such individuals who end up now tainting the image of the whole whatever profession? You realize you're the only profession who actually go with the term "my learned friend." You know, we really respect you, but there are some people who just end up spoiling everything for your good work. I think I'll leave it at that for the other people as well. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for those questions and contributions. I will allow
Mono, can you hear me?
DL. Yes, PLO.
So
If you can address some of the
I can
concerns
take up
kindly so that we don't have it.
I can
Yes.
I can take up the one on national flag and parliamentary mace. Yeah. So the patriot who asked about the national flag. I mean, the scope. I mean, should you display it whatever, or should you carry it with you? So when you look at Article 9 of our Constitution, it talks about the national symbols and the national days. And one of those national symbols of the Republic, that is Kenya, is you have the national flag. Of course, the national anthem, the coat of arms, the public seal, Those are just extras, but the national flag is one of the national symbols. I will again refer you to a statute that equally talks about or establishes the national flag, the emblems, and the names. So that is the National Flag, Emblems, and Names Act, Cap 99 of the laws of Kenya. It's a very, very old act which I think should be repealed by now because it has overstayed its use. Because it first commenced its force of law on 10th of December 1963, and then after it was assented to on 9th of December 1963. So those are close to 50 plus years technically of having this statute, and with the emerging jurisprudence, then I think it's high time Parliament saw it fit to repeal this kind of legislation. So what this particular statute provides when it comes to the national flag, I just take you to Section 3. Section 3 of this particular statute talks about the prohibition of improper use of emblems, names, and likeness. And there is another one on prohibition of display of certain flags. So the wording of this Section 5 of this particular statute is that no person shall display at any place or on any premises any flag or banner, or even permit any flag or banner to be so displayed, being in either case a flag or banner other than a specified emblem which is reputed to belong or is held out by any authority as belonging to the territory of Kenya or of any particular part thereof other than the area of a local authority. And then it goes ahead to talk about that any person who contravenes this particular subsection 1 under section 5 shall be guilty of an offense and liable to fine not exceeding 5,000 shillings or to imprisonment for a term not exceeding 6 months or to both such fine and such imprisonment. And then the last subsection under this section 5 talks about this particular provision of the law applying or binding the government. But here's the gist. The same particular statute talks about, display of flying of national flag on a motor vehicle. And as it currently provides, it talks about the president, the deputy president, the chief, justice, the cabinet secretaries, the speaker of the National Assembly, speaker of the Senate, all those kind of people. But the question we should all be asking ourselves, if the display of such national flag as a treasure and as a national symbol actually displays, our own, ethics, our own, integrity, our own kind of conduct and moral compass as a people. So it shouldn't be an offense for someone to carry with him or her flag to the protest. It shouldn't be an offense because technically, that's what, patriotism should be all about. And legally, because we have quite a number of statutes that were enacted prior to the, Constitution of Kenya 2010, and some of these statutes to date are not in compliance with the Constitution. So freedom of conscience is one of the rights provided under our Constitution. So if your conscience, which should be respected by the state, to carry with you whatever national flag of our country, whatever size it is, to as a symbol of protest against excesses perpetrated by the government, then by all means do. So you carry your flag because there shouldn't be any offense. At the end of the day, is our own constitution should be our guiding star. So in as much as we have statutes that are not fully in compliance with our constitution, then it only means Parliament has much more work to do, to try and revise all these, I would call them a cake, or even defunct statutes, because some of the, provisions I keep reading, in all these statutes that were enacted prior to the 2010 constitution, most of them have been either overtaken by events or they still, maintain what we call the rigidity of, of a way of people or a means of livelihood, by the Kenyan, citizen. So you carry a flag tomorrow, please, by all means, be proud of it, and show the kind of affection that citizen who wants transparency, as a citizen who wants the government to account for every cent. Well, a mace technically is a symbol of more than even a single life, and it shouldn't compel the state to unleash terror on its people. Is ailing us most is we don't have strong institutional foundations, and by strong institutional that its people would want to speak, on, and as you've seen, our parliament, in as much as we have, this particular mace, which is technically, sanctions any proceedings in Parliament, dispensation of political climate, I think the legislature hasn't lived up to its, expectation. And I would just give you two examples why, I would maintain that particular assertion. One, National Assembly, as by law, required, and as the standing orders of the National Assembly require, the chairperson, from Molo, went to State House to give a press briefing on a report that he had meant, that is the legislative arm of government. It makes laws. I mean, it is an oversight, directly and indirectly to the powers we have equally bestowed upon the, judiciary and even the executive. So the fact that you currently based on the concessions of, a bill that was still subsisting before the legislative process that underwent public participation in compliance with Article 10 of the Constitution, and what the planning when it comes to the authenticity of the contents thereon. So you have, so many questions of the people, or does Parliament represent the executive? So, like I said, a mace is something that can be replaced, but not free from the shackles, of the executive that, perhaps control exactly what, they should do. What bills should be passed? How should you pass this bill? What are the kind of quote unquote concessions, that need to be made for this particular report to reflect, the agenda that the executive has, in the subject for another day. But Parliament should be held accountable because technically they have our direct power that we have delegated. And the fact that that particular mace was withdrawn, I would call it, being withdrawn. It wasn't stolen. That mace that we gave to the, members of Parliament to represent us and not represent the, executive, the rights of the arrested persons, in compliance with Article 49 of the Constitution. Thank you.
Yes, just proceed. Proceed
I
then.
wanted to just add something.
If you are addressing the same question,
I
yeah.
just wanted to add something about the Mace is not an instrument that is to be taken with a light touch, sovereignty of the people. It should be noted that in the Westminster parliamentary system, dating back to the 14th century and the 13th century, previously the mace, and it was really historically a symbol, a weapon that was supposed to protect the monarch. And that is historically, it must be remembered that when we started the legislature in 1958, is when it must be remembered that when we started the legislature, The Mace itself was brought from England, and it was brought by the governor himself, late His Excellency Mzee Jomo Kenyatta. Since then, the Mace has never, ever been withdrawn. Period. Historically, the Mace has always been within the precincts of Parliament, and a symbol of signifies the withdrawal of the supremacy of the people of Kenya. The supreme people, this aspect of withdrawing the Mace. It signifies to me that the legislative assembly, that the Mace was made of wood. It doesn't matter if it was made of timber. It doesn't matter the material, the gold. Parliament lost its authority to reconstitute and constitute itself. Until that is to mean that if in 1958 the Mace was introduced by the governors at then, in 1963 it's Jomo Kenyatta who introduced the Mace. It therefore mean the Mace also being a link between the executive and the legislature, then there must be a ceremonial aspect within which this Mace was must be reintroduced. But then there must be a conversation whether the people want the reintroduction of the Mace and then reintroduce it. The system and the mechanism that was used before must then be followed. Can he then also reintroduce the Mace? Number two, with the current existing constitutional dispensation, where we are saying that we are purely presidential system, and we have seen historically the Mace being introduced by either the monarch or the president, in a purely presidential system where the president plays almost no role in aspect of legislation, who then shall introduce or who then is fitted to reintroduce this Mace in Parliament? To me, those are serious constitutional issues that must be relooked, and we cannot just wish away the aspect of the withdrawal of that Mace. One, it was withdrawn when Parliament was in session. Number two, it was withdrawn by the people. Number three, historically, the Mace has always been introduced by the president or the governor. And now we have a purely presidential system where the president plays no role. Then who is to reintroduce this Mace? And the failure to reintroduce this Mace, therefore, what is the fate of Parliament? Can Parliament still convene? Can Parliament still constitute itself? Can Parliament still legislate? To me, before I think the assembly reconvenes and gets from its recess, those are fundamental issues that requires to be resolved. Thank you.
Thank you, Wakili Ndegwa, for those contributions. And I think you've answered the questions that PLO equally weighed in on the symbolism. I think it's important to appreciate what was indicated earlier by PMO, that some of the statutes we are relying on the national emblems, flag, and basically the symbols of national unity are basically for symbolism. There is no law under the Constitution of Kenya 2010 that actually inhibits any member of the public to display the national flag. It's a symbol of national unity. It doesn't have specific individuals to actually run the flag. Of course, you remember there was a case in court with regard to the question as to whether county governors, the governors of our respective county government, can be able to run, the flags in their cars. And of course, to that extent, of course, the court had to interpret. But when it comes to citizens, because these are symbols that are supposed to unite us, not separate us, not distinguish us. Running with your flag, or rather any other national emblem, it's a constitutional right. It's like if you limit someone to display the Kenyan national flag, it's like limiting them to sing the national anthem, because they serve the same purpose. of actually uniting and bringing people of the Republic of Kenya together. I will invite Ochel Dudley to address the question of the citizen arrest, and I think that question has not been addressed. Someone asked the question about uploading these conversations on YouTube, and I believe, Madam President, you have heard that. It's a challenge from the members of the public that this information is supposed to be displayed, perhaps on the social media spaces, to enlighten the public on the questions of law and the interpretation of the law when it comes to Article 37 and the other provisions of the law regarding the Bill of Rights. Kindly,
I think,
don't leave it.
Before Chiel pick up, I wanted to weigh in and add further, and saluting all the patriots who are present tonight. There's on the issue of the flag. For the longest time, as Kenyans, we have been sold fear not to associate with our country, and that has made us to not act as proper patriots. So whoever, and I saw some people even trying to sell the same fear to the families of our fallen soldiers when they used the flag to wrap the coffins, that is improper and against the law. And we wanted to assure the members of the public that it is very much in order to associate with our flag, to raise it high as much as we can, because we need to remember Article 1 of the Constitution. It recognizes the sovereignty of this country belongs to we the people, and it is exercised by all those people in government by way of delegation. So we are the ones who have delegated the powers. So, and if you have delegated the power for them to use, means that power also is with us as citizens of this country, and we should not be ashamed to hold it high and as a sign of patriotism to this nation. And I also think the issue, as Mr. Ndegwa Njiro has mentioned, on the fact of the Mace, I do agree with the submission and further comment that the aspect of trying to portray that it was not the original Mace or all those issues the parliamentarians have been trying to push forward as a narrative to counter the magnitude of what it means to withdraw such a Mace is clearly trying to mislead Kenyans, and without appreciating that the fact that Kenyans walked into that assembly and withdrew that Mace was a sign of withdrawal of legitimacy, and the right procedures must be used to ensure that the same legitimacy is reinstated and authority reinstated in Parliament. I think I can call in Mr. Dudley Ochiel to also further comment on the issue of arrested person.
Thank you. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Steve. Dudley, are you there?
Thank you, Madam President. Manwa, if you could kindly repeat the question.
Dudley, you're muted.
Okay. Manwa, I'm sorry I didn't hear what
Yeah,
the
thank you.
question is. I hope I'll get a chance to hear it again.
Yeah, the question was on the question of citizen arrest and whether the members of the public have a right to arrest any individuals who will want to, snatch mobile phones of the people who are peacefully demonstrating, or individuals who want to commit offenses at the vicinity of the members of the public, and how and whether the members of the public can be able to arrest them. Thank you.
Okay, I think I've seen that happening before. Maybe the first and second protests, there were people who were arrested and handed over to the police somewhere around Tomboya and Archives.
Dudley, you're not clear.
Okay. I'm saying that I think the question of citizens arrest is something we've seen happening before. If you remember the first and second protests, there were people who were arrested and handed over to the police. But then on a pragmatic level, on a practical level, you also need to be mindful of your safety. If the goon is armed, you possibly can't arrest them. They could injure you or harm you. So it's also a matter of pragmatism. And if you'd allow me to add something further to the flag question, our constitution says that all law that preceded the constitution should be read with the necessary modifications, amendments, alterations to bring it into conformity with the current constitution. So we need to test some of these colonial laws. The flag statute is a colonial statute. It was meant to preserve the colors of the flag to the
I'm sorry, Dudley.
Kindly, Dudley, unmute and proceed.
Okay. I was saying that on the flag question, the Flag Act is a colonial statute.
We have lost you, Dudley.
Dudley, are you there? Kindly.
He's muted. Unmute and speak up. Okay. You can pick some other speaker.
Wallo, kindly, you can, as we wait for Dudley's microphone. Wallo, if you can address your question, you have the microphone. If Wallo is not there, Morara. Oh, Wallo, kindly proceed. I can see your hand. Kindly unmute and proceed.
Thank you very much. I think all of us had been muted there for a second, but we are okay now. Now, mine is just a small question. I think I'm taking you back to Article 1. I was having a conversation today, and I just wanted some clarity from our legal minds. You can help us understand. Now, Article 1 says we can exercise our rights either directly or indirectly through a representative. Now, if you can explain to me very easily, in the easiest of terms, how we are supposed to exercise it directly, assuming that we actually push the government to the wall to a point where, say, the president says, you know what, this is too much, I resign. And then the deputy, we say we don't want Rigathi. Rigathi says, you know what, I came with the president on one ticket. If he goes, I go. And we don't want the speaker or whatnot. What happens next if we push the government to the wall? How do we then now exercise ourselves, represent ourselves directly, knowing very well that power abhors a vacuum? And I know at some point the good barrister Dr. Miguna had addressed this, but I'd like some clarity on the same issue. How do we now get to a point where we don't slide to anarchy and find ourselves at the mercy of the military? Thank you.
Thank you, Wallo. Dudley, I think you're back. I don't know whether your connection is clear so that you can finish on your point and addressing the questions. If you can respond if you're back. But we can still take another question. We haven't had a lady address Sylvia. Sylvia, as we wait for Dudley, kindly. Sylvia, you have the microphone.
Good evening, everyone. Hello.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening.
Yeah, I just have one question about what happened today and the propaganda that the government threw at us about that guy who is being accused of, he admitted of killing all those people. My question is, what if it was just a way of the government to silence us, and then in the end they come out to say that there's no enough proof or something, what will happen to the DCI who came outrightly and deceived the citizens? And now, how will justice be served to those people who are just left without closure?
Thank you. Thank you for your question, Sylvia. First, I think even as we wait for the advocates on this forum to address that question, let me first say that the government has a duty, and the security agencies particularly have a duty to ensure that they investigate and prefer prosecution to the DPP for purposes of actually instituting proceedings against individuals who have been identified to have committed the same offenses. And so, of course, the reason why we are monitoring this process, it's because we want utmost transparency as the Law Society of Kenya. We'll be following up on the law games with the process of investigation, and we'll actually call them off because that's part of our duty as the Law Society to check our government institutions and find out whether they actually deliver on their mandate. The question of citizen arrest, you have a right to arrest a person who commits an offense in your presence. And this is very important. If your phone is snatched by an individual and you have capacity to arrest them, as Dudley indicated, you can proceed and arrest them. Present these individuals before a police officer. If they refuse to actually apprehend them based on the offense they have committed, find means and ways to present this individual to a police station, demand for an occurrence book number for that offense, and perhaps then at that juncture you can be able to request the Law Society of Kenya to follow up on that. At the same time, we will hope that these officers can be able to follow on that offense and perhaps institute investigations and recommend prosecution as the law requires. But I think Dudley indicated that it's very important for us to also be very careful. Citizen arrest is a serious process, and it may lead to personal injury, personal, you might be able to be hurt in the process of arresting this person, and that's why this right to the citizens to arrest individuals has almost all the time not been exercised properly. So it's very important that at least when you are conducting this citizen arrest, you ensure that you record these occurrences. You are able to substantiate the offense that is these individuals undertook. And at the same time, the more witnesses you are, the better, because an offense is an offense. And whereas you have that right, you are taking up the duties of the investigative agencies, and you're attempting to actually ensure that individuals take up responsibility for the offenses they do. And so be very careful even as you do it, because at the end of the day, nobody wants any casualties as a result of the process. If there are police officers within your vicinity, identify the people violating those rights or committing those offenses, and draw those police officers to those offenses. Ensure that you get identity of those police officers, so that when they refuse to take action, you're able to say, we reported to a police officer within the vicinity of the occurrence of the offense, but they refused to take action, and for that reason we feel that they undermined our right to apprehend a person who committed an offense. I can allow several other speakers to come in. Engineer AM, you've been having the microphone for some time. I don't know whether you have something to say. We have James. James, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear.
Kindly, if you can proceed in a minute or two and address your concerns.
Okay, I have like 3 to 4 questions. The first is there are so many bills that has been passed, e.g. on health bills and agriculture bills that are exposing our economics and health as people. How are we going to do about that in order to return our nation into normalcy? Second question, how can we hasten the process of restoring our country since everything is not working as we still demonstrate? Another question, can I fly the national flag on my car? Then there is another question, what steps has LSK taken regarding auditing of our national debts? If those concerns can be addressed, maybe I can be more comfortable of my country.
Thank you. Thank you for those questions that you have raised. Nelson?
Hi, thank you for the mic. I just have one question. So I know some of you are aware that I exposed the PPP on JKIA, and it's shredded with a lot of secrecy. And I just wanted to ask the lawyers to explain to us the PPP Act and what Murkomen and Kositani and his team did. Is it legal what they did? Just let us know, what the PPP Act has and what are the provisions, what they can do without public participation, what they cannot do without public participation, this kind of thing.
Thank you. Thank you very much. PLO, are you there? Kindly, if you can pick some of those questions that have been addressed to us.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes. After you, we can have Ndegwa, perhaps the same questions.
All right, thank you. So there was the question on. I was listening to what one of the patriots was asking about the health bills. Can we challenge, that which is not pleasant to our ears as citizens? Well, the legislative process, it's a whole, scope. It begins with the pre-publication scrutiny of a bill. Once it's fronted, to the departmental committees of either the National Assembly or standing committees of the Senate, and if it's money bill through the Budget and Appropriations Committee before again it's channeled to the Finance and National Planning Committee, depending on the context and whether the bill is a public bill or a government-sponsored bill, or if it's a private bill or an ordinary bill, and the modalities of the same. So where we do come in as citizens is we could come in through article 10 of the Constitution during the draft stages of this particular bill. The same way we have the ICTA draft bill undergoing intense public participation, and I am not pro that bill because it's a rebirth of a bill that was shot down in the 12th Parliament, and it is only rekindled but with a different kind of approach, but the script is just the same. So where you could come in now through the draft stages now, this because the ICTA bill is yet to even be approved in the pre-publication scrutiny for it to be a formal bill that warrants now the entire legislative process until its enactment. So where we do come in now as citizens, I think the most important stage is always out of the first reading, just before the second reading, where now either depending on which particular house is the or go what you call the duality concept or the duality doctrine. That will mean it has to be passed by the Senate and passed by the National Assembly. And if the National Assembly is the originating bill, it has to be passed by the Senate, then taken back to the National Assembly before being forwarded by the Speaker of that originating house. So the public participation after the first reading is the most intense stage. But the norm, the culture, and what we've been subjected to over time, not just by the legislators of the 13th Parliament. This is the 13th Parliament, and even the previous Parliament, the 12th Parliament. I think the views of the members of the public, and this is something that has happened over time. By the time the respective committee of parliament chooses to sit down and try and analyze all this input given by different stakeholders, then most of this, input given by the members of the public are never considered. So what you do now, if Parliament proceeds to pass that bill, after the second reading, read the second time division stage, voted to go to the committee of the whole house, the report of the committee of the whole house tabled before the entire, committee of the entire setup of Parliament. That's the committee now of the whole, and then taken to the third reading. Of course, substantive amendments can still be made at the committee of the whole house. And the third reading, not much, substantive amendments, save for, either the, schedules or just rearrangement of how clauses are, and then taken to the president. So we can challenge, a bill that is not really pro people, after its enactment by, the president. And sometimes you'd find that a bill takes, the commencement date of any bill into law differs depending on, the subject matters. So that those bills that have been challenged, after, enactment, by the president or after being asserted into law, because they disregarded the public participation stage of the first reading and even during the pre-publication, scrutiny. And tomorrow around, 7:30 or so, Mzalendo Trust, will be hosting the civic education, but on bills, technically the legislative process, the bills, that are of utmost, perhaps, importance to us, like the conflict of interest bill, which was passed by the Senate with, raft of very, for lack of a better word, silly and inconsiderate amendments to allow legislators to do business with government and even their wives and the extended, concubines, if any, to do exactly that which the law prohibits them to do. But because of lack of accountability, because of lack of compliance with Chapter 6 of the Constitution, what legislators are doing, they're disregarding, exactly what is happening. Because when it is time, quote unquote, to eat, all of them gather together. And it doesn't matter whether you're in the opposition or you're in the ruling party. But when it comes to such amendments, best believe they will always lock heads and, lock horns and whatever it is to ensure such amendments passes. So Mzalendo Trust tomorrow, still on space. I'll be one of the panelists. So just trying to talk about those particular bills and even the legislative process, what should be done at what stage and what have you. So today I won't spend much time on this, but that's basically the framework and the overview of where does our voice matter more when it comes to the legislative process. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, PLO, for those responses. I think someone asked the question about running a flag in their motor vehicle, in their cars and in their vehicles. I think there's a difference between running a flag the same way the president runs it, and there's legislation to it, and there's also precedent in terms of case law. And I don't think it's possible for you to run a flag that way. But generally, carrying the and using it the unity that comes with the flag. Remember when we celebrate as a country, we raise the national flag. Remember when we win in the in the athlete in the sports field, we raise the national flag. It's a symbol of unity, and therefore there is no offense any of the Kenyan citizens actually having the flag in their possession or putting it in your car, but running it the way it's run by the president, because I believe the president and the deputy president have a right under statute to actually have the flags in their cars. But it boils down to the mode, and I think this is a question that most of the advocates here will be able to address. It all boils down to the mode that you choose to run it, but there's no provision of the law that stops you from displaying it. I will call Mosetti
Yeah.
to raise the questions here before Ndegwa you come in, so that if there's an extra question, you can be able to pick it up.
Only one
Then we
thing
have
on that issue of the flag.
yes, proceed.
If you may, I am one of the proponents that believes in the school of thought that we need to demystify what all leadership is about. And we are demystifying these by reminding these elected individuals that they are not our masters, they are our servants. And that is a constitutional provision and Article 75, that the people of Kenya contemplated a servant leadership when they enacted the new constitution and when they wanted to formulate the manner and the means in which they shall be governed. And for the question of flying the flag, I don't believe it's a preserve of the president or his deputy. One, we all understand that Article 27 is alive, that there shall be no discrimination and that we shall have the benefit of equal treatment before the law. And that question of the equality before the law puts us all in one pedestal. The question of saying that the flag belongs to the president can single-handedly and exclusively fly this flag ought and must be demystified, so that he may not think that he's a demigod, so that we declothe him of this arbitrariness and we declothe him of this arrogance, so that once we tell him shuka, he understands what exactly that means. So in my view, flying the flag ought not be an offense, as Dudley indicated, that all laws before the enforcement, before the effective date, shall be applied with the necessary modification, alterations, and adaptations, so as to bring them into conformity with the new dispensation. The question of the preserving or exclusively saying that X, Y, Z are the only ones who can fly a flag, we must remember that Article 10, which binds all state organs and all persons, speaks about the principle of patriotism. So why should it be that Mr. William Ruto should be seen as if he's more patriotic by flying the flag more than myself? So in my view, all that has been demystified. I am actually in the process of having one done for myself. I will be flying it as a Kenyan and as a patriotic Kenyan, so that then I can be charged. And we deal with it from that perspective. But we must bring this country to the question of accountability. Much of the things that you are seeing happening is because of the indiscipline that is in government. Yet Article 10 speaks about good governance. I am so happy that now the people and the masses have begun to rise up against this impunity, and that we have begun claiming the rightful place in our God's kingdom. And that the fullness of time, all these draconian laws and draconian habits, because some of them are habits that were borrowed from Mzungu, must be brought to a still. They must be buried. We must forget about them. The president is not above the law. The president and his deputy are servants of the people. That's all I wish to submit on.
Thank you. Thank you, Council. I want to have Wiara kindly. We can keep it short because we have until 11 to be able to address some of the concerns that are raised. If you can keep your question and the responses short. Wiara, you have the microphone.
Hi. So mine would be a follow-up question to what Wallo had asked before. So assuming military was to take over, what is the exact process? And will they lead till 2027 or there'll be by-elections in between? Yeah, thank you.
I believe that I was called upon
That
earlier.
question.
Sorry?
No, I was just speaking to Manu. I believe that I was called upon earlier to make my submission. So,
Your network is not as good.
I guess so.
I was saying that I believe I was called upon earlier to make my submission. I believe it is all right if I can go right ahead.
Kindly proceed.
All right. There's been talk of the Mace, and some gentleman made a long treatise about the history of the Mace. I believe that is something we need to dissociate ourselves from, because it is a symbol of colonialism, and I'm not sure that is the kind of heritage you want to move ahead with. I have a question. This is a subject that has also been addressed earlier, but I believe that we need to talk more about it regarding justice for the victims who died during Maandamano. I mean, there's been talk of the officers who shot people, being brought to book. But what is the Law Society of Kenya doing to have these victims at least recognized one and to compensated? I mean, we need. I believe that in some of the mature democracies, when a citizen is harmed by government or by the the representatives of government, in this case the police, they can take the city to court, they can take the police department to court, and then they get some compensation, be it monetary, be it recognition, but at least those families of those people, they need to be individually compensated for losing their lives, for getting hurt, and all of those. I'd like that to be answered.
Okay. Finished asking the questions you intended to. Can we have Bonnie? Then we have interventions from the advocates on this forum. Bonnie, kindly, if you can take the microphone.
Yep, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity. I wanted to just I just wanted to speak on one point. We're making a lot of progress, but I think that we're missing an opportunity here. You will agree with me that a large or big reason as to why we're having the issues that we have here in our country has to do with corruption, and I'm talking specifically, large-scale corruption. Obviously, the president made his moves last week, sort of accepting that the status quo is not going to continue. We will see what he does at a national level to address the issue of corruption. But I believe that there's a lot of corruption that's happening at the county level, and I don't see enough emphasis on that. I'm not seeing us focus on addressing that, and I feel like we have an opportunity here where we can make big gains in terms of the war against corruption. We can't have a situation where these politicians are running for governorships. They go and steal everything, leave office, and are able to keep the loot and are able to keep their reputation. Just think about this. The governor of Migori stole 2 point something billion from that county. If you look at the budget for 2023, that 2 billion is about 30% of the budget that's supposed to cater for over 1 million people. He gets out, he takes that money, settles for 10% of that amount, has his reputation, might run for governor again. We can't have this. And so I'm asking everybody here to not lose focus on all areas where we can make improvements. You saw the issue happened last week with regards to the governor of Kiambu, where he was, essentially there was a press conference by Tatu City accusing him of a shakedown, extortion. I posted something on my X because I'm also a victim of the same extortion. Our institutions are failing us. I have written to the EACC, written to DCI, letting know that I have evidence of corruption by county government officials. I have call records. I have, records of payments. But nobody seems to be interested. Nobody seems to be interested. So we need to put pressure at the county level. We need to focus on the county level because we don't want to lose this opportunity. And I feel like we are spending too much time talking about some things that are, it's good to focus on, but let's try to take advantage of every opportunity that we have to make changes in our country. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think someone has asked a question with regard to the military deployment initially and during these sessions on citizen assembly, we have, as the Law Society of Kenya indicated to the members of the public, that we instituted proceedings against the deployment of the military. And of course, some of you are privy to the orders that were issued by Honorable Justice Mugambi. We are serious in ensuring that the substantive questions raised in that petition with regard to Article 241 read together with Article 58 are properly determined by the court to give guidance going forward. I don't think the Gazette notice issued by the former Cabinet Secretary, I hope I'll be proper by indicating that he's a former Cabinet Secretary, pursuant to the directions of the President, that he no longer sits in that docket.
Indeed, a former.
We challenge the same. Yes, thank you. We indeed challenge the same, and we are following up closely. As a matter of fact, we are interested in having a 3-judge bench pursuant to the advice of the President of the Law Society of Kenya, Madam Faith Odhiambo, to have a 3-judge bench to determine those substantive questions under Article 241, read together with Article 58 on the questions of deployment of the military and on the question of whether there was an emergency to actually invoke Article 241. We'll be reporting, of course, to the members of the public on the progress of the court case. And I think to answer the question by the person who asked it, I don't think the military will be on our streets for life or for the rest of the period within which this government will be in office, depending on what the court will determine and depending on the prevailing circumstances that lead after this. There is a question that was raised about justice to the victims of maandamano and whether there is documentation. I want to inform you that indeed we have been documenting every case. And initially when we started this citizen assembly, we indicated that we have been documenting every single case that touches on abduction. And we have been in court on the questions of abduction. We have also been in court on the questions of injuries meted on the members of the public as a result of exercising that fundamental right. We also indicated that we have cases in court on the questions of deaths. And this informs you that we have documentation, and we are continuing and will continue to hold the necessary government entities responsible for giving information and investigating this process, and so that we'll ensure that every person who was injured, abducted, murdered, taken in beyond 24 hours, and any other atrocities under the Constitution are actually someone takes responsibility for that, and so considering that this is an ongoing process. We ask you that you continue finding out the progress of the cases that you have instituted in court, and will not hesitate to report them to the members of the public as to what the court determines. There was a question on corruption and theft of public money. And I think this has been a subject. I think the Law Society has been on the forefront, holding the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Court responsible for the cases they institute and the investigations that ought to be done. You remember the president of the Law Society of Kenya, Faith Odhiambo, did a letter when there were withdrawals, particularly with regard to that Migori matter. The Law Society has an entire committee that looks into those cases, and I think in due time we'll be able to inform the members of the public as to the position the Law Society takes, and as to whether we'll challenge any further withdrawal of any properly instituted and approved criminal anti-corruption case against any member of the public, and what the position of the Law Society is. If you have evidence, if you have information against a public officer that touches on corruption, I believe there are several avenues. The Office of the Director of Public Prosecution has an avenue. The Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission has an avenue. And I think if you have written to them, please copy the Law Society of Kenya, because we are able to follow up on those letters that are written to those organizations. It's very important that you notify us, and perhaps in confidence we have shared the Law Society of Kenya toll number. So it's important, if you have evidence against these public officers, just share with the Law Society of Kenya. It will be reviewed by the panel of advocates available, and perhaps a proper position will be communicated through the Office of the President of the Law Society of Kenya as to which action we'll take. So do not hesitate to actually share such information with the members, the Council of the Law Society of Kenya, through the toll number that has been shared in all social media platforms of the Law Society, so that you are able to, if you have documented the evidence and you think with the EACC and they have not followed up, then as the Law Society of Kenya, we shall actually pursue and continue to pursue the individuals in those respective offices to ensure that proper prosecution and cases are instituted against those individuals who have committed those offenses against the public. I don't know whether J. Brian, can you hear me? J. Brian, if you're not there, Wiara, did you ask your question? Wiara, you have the microphone.
We have also Wakili Mr. Mugambi.
Kindly, we can proceed, Mugambi. Wiara, kindly proceed. You have the microphone.
Mugambi
Okay, hi.
here.
Sorry.
You muted me.
Okay, Mugambi, Wiara, we can have you after Wakili Mugambi.
Thank you very much. You had muted me, so I couldn't activate my microphone. But thank you for the opportunity. And like all the other speakers, I'd like to start by sending my condolences to the families of departed patriots. It was unnecessary, unfortunate, and their deaths will not be in vain. In terms of my contribution, I just want to say a few things. One is to thank Faith, the president, and the Law Society for standing in the gap. I think the image of the Law Society had been damaged quite a lot by previous bickering and also by the bickering that goes on in the AGMs, so that is what the members of the public are used to. But now I think that has been redeemed, and so congratulations, and keep doing the good work. Related to that, I would like to request if you could publicize details of where we could help raise funds for the Law Society initiatives relating to this public interest litigation, because like personally, I would like to contribute. I have contributed in other forums in relation to the protests and injuries and all of that, but I would also like to support the Law Society initiatives, and I believe there are very many people who would like to do that as well. So if that can be set up, if it doesn't exist, or if it exists, if it can be publicized a little more. Then there was a question on PPPs. I do know a few things about PPPs, but I wouldn't want to make this a seminar on PPPs. But I'd like to just tell the person who asked that question that a PPP is not supposed to be a private affair where, I think it was Nelson, if I'm not wrong. It's not supposed to be a private affair. So if Murkomen and Co have been doing things behind our backs, then that is illegal, because the PPP framework under the law has the same transparency measures just like any public procurement. And so whereas the framework is very specific and detailed, the accountability and transparency processes are very much similar to the public procurement ones, which of course everybody will be more or less familiar with here. Then the national flag, I know that was a very interesting question. There's national flag emblems and something act of 1963, which I agree with Wakili Ndegwa needs to be repealed, because carrying the flag is a symbol of patriotism and pride in it, and it shouldn't be an offense to do so. But unfortunately, we have that 1963 law which gave the Minister for Interior or Home Affairs, whichever it is that is normally responsible for those things, to designate the people who can fly the flag. And in our case, I think when we are having this paradigm shift in the country, this is also one of the things that needs to change. In the UK, for instance, where I live, the Prime Minister doesn't have a flag on his car. Ministers don't have flags on their cars. Only the king has a flag on his car, and it is not even the Union Jack. It is the what is the standard, the monarch's standard. So that's what they have on their car. So we've used the flag as a symbol of power and to get our way on the roads and things like that. And I think that needs to stop. Then on the current protests led by Gen Zs, I am very, very proud of Gen Zs, because they've done what we didn't have the courage to do. And I say that with a little bit of shame, even though I personally have participated in protests in the past, in the clamor for multipartyism. I was at the university and I used to go for protests. So I did my part, but I think the courage they demonstrated is much more to be admired than what I can say I did myself, or so others do. But I think we need to as a law society also probably guide on some of the laws, because the propaganda that is being thrown around that there will be a constitutional crisis and all of that really needs to be debunked. Because I think if I hear correctly, the chant Ruto must go is not about the man Ruto only, it is the government. So people saying that Gachagua will become president, I think are missing the point. And I think the law society should probably publish guidance on some of these things. I am a commercial lawyer, not a litigation or constitutional lawyer, so I may not know some of the details into the level that I can advise anybody without appearing like a fool myself. But I think it is important that we do something along the lines that guide people on what the law is. I think the fear being thrown around that the military will take over and all of that, those are the things that we need to counter by stating the correct position. And as I understand it, the clamor, first of all, by Gen Z is for the IBC to be reconstituted. And the next thing that happens is the resignation of the government and fresh elections. That's what I understand Gen Zs to be demanding, and I think it is the right thing to do. And I don't think anybody should argue that it is unconstitutional or to create a constitutional crisis, because we the people can exercise the power directly. And if we the people decide we need an election, I don't see that there is anything unconstitutional about that. And when I
Luckily,
hear,
we are losing you.
hello, can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Yeah,
Yes, we can hear you.
yeah, kindly, President. Yeah,
Where did you lose me?
No, go on, Mr. Mugambi.
you're back now. You're back now.
So when I hear that there is proposals to have a government of national unity, that's also that's unconstitutional. But nobody has come up to tell those who are saying that we need a government of national unity that is not in the constitution. So you can't say on one hand that having fresh elections is not in the constitution, but on the other one argue that having a government of national unity is perfectly okay. I think, as I said, I didn't want to dominate the call with my ramblings, so I think I'll stop it there for now. And thank you once again for the opportunity, and for everybody who's listening in. I think it is a great sacrifice that everyone is making, and I salute you all.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mugambi.
Thank you, Wakili
And
Mugambi, for those contributions. I think if you go to the Law Society of Kenya page, I think you raised the question as to the contributions towards public interest litigation process that the Law Society is undertaking. Of course, we have a pro bono kitty where we bring in advocates who can be able to represent members of the public. Perhaps that will go a long way. If you can access the Law Society of Kenya page on this forum and in the other forums, you will get details how you can make your contributions and assist advocates who are able to pick up these matters that emanate from violation of fundamental human rights. Wiara, you are next. Kindly, if you can raise your questions, and appreciate the advocates who are on this forum, because this is very important and these are collective duty. Perhaps some of the questions being raised will be best addressed by some of you. I know we have a short period remaining before the session ends. I will ask the president to be on the standby to give final remarks, but we need several questions, perhaps with the time remaining, so that we are able to address them even as we go forward. Thank you very much. Wiara, if you have the mic.
Hi, sorry, probably I had network issues before, but my question was, if the military was to take over, what would be the exact process? And also, will they take over till 2027, or would we have by-elections before 2027? Thank you.
I think we have just answered that question. The military is not taking over government because, as a matter of fact, we still have a government under the strict reading of our laws. We still have a president in office, and we still have the government entities in place. The question about deployment of the military is basically based on Article 241 and read together with Article 58. Article 58 provides for emergency situations and what constitutes a state of emergency. And pursuant to that article, then Article 241 gives, under Article 241 3 B and C, provides for instances where you can actually either go to Parliament, seek, and the Cabinet Secretary necessary will go to Parliament and seek for mandate to deploy, and Parliament will allow the military to get into the space. Cases we have filed in court as the Law Society of Kenya touch on the interpretation of those two articles of the Constitution, Article 58 and Article 241. And one of the major questions the court to actually interpret substantively will be whether there was a state of emergency in the first place for the deployment that took place previously. And the second question that will be asked is whether Parliament was properly constituted to actually allow the military to come into the civilian space. And thirdly, whether the Cabinet Secretary will do what he did, issue a gazette notice first, and then seek for the parliamentary permission. Our interpretation of the Constitution as the Law Society of Kenya is that Parliament must be seized of the requests from the Cabinet Secretary and relevant government institutions before it makes a decision. It cannot make a decision after it has already been made through the Cabinet Secretary. And those are fundamental questions of law. And of course, whether there was any emergency in the first place to actually have the military come into the Kenyan space to assist the police officers. And so those are questions that are live in court. And we expect, of course, the court to make a determination on those questions. There is nothing, as Mugambi Wakili has said, we do not have a state of emergency. We do not have military in power. We have a president, of course, in office as we speak. The institutions of government have not fallen out. They are still in place. And if it happens that the president steps down or is removed on that wave of Ruto must go, then of course our duty as the Law Society of Kenya will to determine whether there is a process. Remember, our duty is basically following up the process and ensuring that the process is properly followed. And number two, ensuring that fundamental human rights are not violated. And at the same time that government and anybody within the space of public office takes up responsibility in terms of interpreting the Constitution properly, and actually the directives they give are in conformity with the Constitution. We have Hosea. We can have Hosea, then Jay, then DJ. Before I bring forth the president, kindly if you can keep your questions short. Hosea, can you hear me? Mr. J. Brian? DJ Paul? Kimutai? Steve, I hope you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you, Mr. Mano.
I hope you can hear me, Steve.
Yes, I can hear you.
Hosea, are you there? Hosea Sitati? Kindly drop your microphone if you don't intend to ask any question. We have Evans. James.
James.
Okay. Thank you for this opportunity once again, and thanks for the first two questions that has been answered. But the question that has not been answered, and I would like to repeat it again. What steps has LSK taken so far regarding auditing of our national debt, since there was a whistleblower who cited money loudly in the name of loan? If that question can be answered, I may also feel satisfied.
Okay. Thanks for that question. I think the Citizen Assembly addressed the question of the auditing of the national debt. And I think if you've been keen enough, you've seen the position of the Law Society with regard to the task force that was created by the President of the Republic of Kenya to actually deal with the question of debt. And I think the position of the LSK was very simple, that Article 229 provides for proper process under the OAG, the Auditor General's Office, to first deal with public debt, not only public debt, but also the expenditures of all the ministries and public offices. And we indicated clearly that these duties given to the Auditor General cannot be taken away by a task force through a presidential executive order. And that is why the Law Society declined to participate in the task force that was created, because it was extra constitutional, and it could not have taken away the functions and duties of the Auditor General. Remember, the Constitution creates that office as an independent office. And so we are here fighting to reduce public expenditure, fighting to reduce the loss of public funds, but the executive is in creating institutions through task forces, through executive orders, which will actually convolute the public debt and also convolute public expenditure. And that's why it was very important that the government, if it's listening and if it's keen, it should engage the institutions provided under the Constitution, and in this case, the Office of the Auditor General, to actually conduct a forensic audit on the public debt and report to the president. Remember, these are some of the offices created under the Constitution which are deemed to be independent. And so the president can only request them to actually conduct the same and report to him, because he is the president of the Republic of Kenya. They have a duty to investigate, they have access, they have resources, they have constitutional and legislative legitimacy to do that work, because that is the purpose of an Auditor General. And so we went to court to challenge the decision to have a task force. And again, we gave an advisory through the letter that the President of the Law Society of Kenya gave, that kindly follow the process under Article 229 of the Constitution of Kenya with regard to the question of audit of public finance, public debt, and you have an entity that is paid by the taxpayer to conduct these audits. And remember, we indicated that the Auditor General publishes all audits from parastatals, government entities, universities, and any government entity that actually spends public money in their website. The members of the public can access these reports. and be able to understand and know how their counties spent the money that is allocated to them, how their respective the purpose, spend the money, how ministries and the resources that are put on that actually they are supposed to spend, and whether they actually use the money allocated to them as per the previous budget towards the projects and activities that such monies were actually put forth under the budget to deal with. And so I hope I've answered.
Okay, I think it's up to there.
Thank you very much. No, if Jay is there, if you can take over the microphone, then we can have two other questions before I bring forth the president of the Law Society. Jay, are you there? Victor, Peter, Bonnie, you still have a question? I don't know if anyone can hear me.
Can you hear you, Mr.
Joel,
Manwa? I think
Joel. Thank you. Joel, you have the microphone. Okay, I think
give cancer.
we can't hear. Okay.
Good
Ask
evening.
cancer.
Hello, good evening. I wanted to ask a question because I've been following up on cancer issues, and the management was suspended post COVID-19 scandal. But currently on their website, the directors, only one, Mr. Charles Juma, is not available on the website. But the rest, the legal and a couple others are still on. I think they are still on duty, but they were recommended for investigations. So I'm not sure why they are still on. Why still on duty, or why they are still serving under KEMSA as of now.
Thank you for that. PLO, are you there?
Hey,
Kindly pick it up. The question on KEMSA.
I think I had lost him towards the end, so kindly, if he could just do a recap of the question.
Okay, my question is because there was an investigation going on post-COVID-19 scandal under KEMSA, and most of the directors were suspended pending investigations. So only one, Charles Juma, is not a director on the website still, as at to date. But the rest, the legal director, the finance director, I think the warehousing director, the corporate affairs director are still on the website, and they are, I believe that they are still in office. So I'm not sure how far that investigation went or if they were reinstated. Thank you.
Okay. From the starting point of being reinstated or lack thereof, I think I only saw one particular appointment that was made from those that were indicted at KEMSA, and the person was given a different responsibility. However, Parliament had actually the standing committee on health, I do remember for Senate, had launched an inquiry into the alleged irregular the procurement of long-lasting insecticide-treated nets at KEMSA, part of the procurement irregularities that were there. This report was tabled on 8th, if I remember correctly, 8th of May 2024. It was approved for tabling at the Senate. So I think the case has not been substantively solved, and even if they were not substantively reinstated, then of course you expect, as one of the indictees was given a different position to serve elsewhere, will only mean that our commitment to exactly fighting, our intentions as a country and the executive to begin with, not just KEMSA, but the different parastatals, that have, fallen short of grace when it comes to, accountability on corruption. And the president has still gone ahead to deploy them, elsewhere, or to even, appoint them to serve substantively in different, positions. So the KEMSA story isn't a different one, but I think at the end of the day, like I earlier said, what Dr. Martin Luther King said, the fact that the arc of justice, may take too long to bend. Ultimately, it will bend, and what we need to see is the action and not the empty rhetorics, on the act of fighting corruption that the president, has been saying all along. And at the end of the day, the people who have been indicted, the COVID, billionaires have never been brought to book to date. So with that, I think our role as LSK will still be to check on the progress made on the fight against corruption, what has been done, what has not been done, and push to have, accountability, that public funds may actually be, safeguarded, that the public may have, or to win the trust, at the, judiciary, and just give them a vote of confidence when it comes to keeping such people in check. But this fight may not be, won alone as LSK. In the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution, the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, all these law enforcement agencies have to work, hand in hand together to ensure that at the end of the day, because right now I think the public trust is waning when it comes to the fight against corruption, and that is what we are striving to bring back. So back to you, Manuel.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Kindly allow me to bring the president. This session was supposed to end 8 minutes ago, but this session was on Article 37 of the Constitution. If you intend to participate in a public protest, kindly remain peaceful. And I think if you access the Law Society of Kenya pages, you'll see the guidelines on protests. Do not be armed, and do not destroy, other people's vehicles or harm other non-protesters. Remember that the exercise of the right to demonstrate is an individual decision. If someone else or a motorist is using the road that you are protesting, kindly allow them to exercise their right to move around. Do not assault or harm members of the press. Do not restrict the movement of traffic and other road users. Stick to zoned areas of protests.
Manu, are you still speaking?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, now you're back.
Yes, thank you. I'm saying that the members of the public can be able to access the guidelines that the Law Society has given on the questions of demonstrations. Kindly address the same, access the same in the pages that have been provided. At this opportune time, I want to bring in the president of the Law Society of Kenya, who has been the host of this event. And I wish to thank her for giving the members of the public the opportunity to address questions on Article 37. I wish to thank the advocates who have actively participated on the Citizen Assembly from the time we started it and even as we go forward. It's very important to note that the responsibility and duties of the Law Society are actually stipulated under the Constitution, and it's important that you, under statute, and that is the Law Society of Kenya Act, and it's important that we conduct our duties as the Law Society as per those provisions, and that is why we have these sessions to enlighten the members of the public on their rights and their duties and what is wrong and what is right. Madam President, are you there?
Yes, so I want to just say thank you, Manwa and Steve, for co-hosting, and all the other lawyers who came in to just support. I want to say that we will continue the Citizens Assembly and we'll have other topical issues that we can discuss with regards to also us holding accountable the different offices. I've noted some of your questions on how can we change the constitution, talking about reduction of the wage bill, and people also looking critical even on the Appropriations Act that has now come to pass. But I'd also say being an active or a proactive citizen is quite important, even not only at the national government level, but at the county level, because these are the institutions that are supposed to help bring developmental changes. As also being watchful with regards to how the public funds are utilized, not only by the counties and the national government, but also your members of parliament and women representatives that receive money that ought to be channeled to the right places, that we can ensure we change the systems in our country to enable a majority to benefit, that we can assure ourselves that as a nation we're taking care of the future with regards to education and healthcare services, which will encompass a broader majority of the people of Kenya. I'd want to say we thank you for joining the Citizens Assembly. We'll be notifying you if we'll have one on Friday. And if you have one in between, we'll let you know and the topics that we'll be discussing. Stay safe and God bless.
God bless you too. Have a good one.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam President. Have a good one, everyone.
Thanks, Rice. Good evening.